Okay, so next we'll make the slips. And over the course of, if you can see all these, leave my head back. Over the course of the last few years, I've collected a few different kinds of cane. Empty box. So I've got Anderson cane, and I've got, this is Samson. Yeah, this is some Samson cane right here. In different diameters, running from like 19 millimeters to 24 to 26 millimeters, with most of them being probably in that latter amount. The I also have some Argentinian cane, and I've got to work with some more. And the nice part about this stuff, it's the cleanest cane I've ever seen, but it is hard and dense. So I'm sure I can make a good read out of this, but I haven't learned how to do it yet. My favorite, and this runs contrary to what all the experienced experts say, is Madeira. And I accidentally ordered a whole bunch of it. And it's in the 24 to 26 millimeter range, which is probably a little bit on the large side. You know, Brad makes his around 22 millimeters. But I've gotten okay results with these. The other cane, this is some Samson. This is actually pretty clean, and I think it's smaller diameter stuff. But the California cane I find more difficult to work with. It splits more easily, and I haven't noticed a big difference in the way it sounds on the pipes. So for this video we'll do Madeira, and I'm going to get the smallest diameter I have and still have to be kind of clean. That's not very clean. Okay, that's 25, and that looks pretty clean. Let's see if we can find anything smaller than that. These kind of a small one, so is this one. Nope. Well, maybe this one is the way to go. What I do is I try and stay away from stuff that's bowed. It's bowed a little bit here, but if I cut it here, it may not be that bad. I look for a straight section. I don't like to see creases in here because it's like a starting point for a crack. Like right around in here looks pretty good. So actually the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut this down to size. And I think most people say cut around 100 or 105 millimeters. I think I cut a little bit longer, so I make sure I have enough cane for trimming it. I'm trying to find where a nice straight. Probably right here. So let's do just roughly around 100. Let me see what I use over here. Slip, 110 millimeters. It's probably a little bit more than I need, but let's cut it out there. little hacksaw. When I get down towards the end, I put a little pressure, downward pressure on this side. And you want to cut it as perpendicular to the line of the can as possible. Uh-oh. Tricky part is you can't put the vise too tight, then you'll crack the can. You know what I probably need to do is get a finer blade for my bandsaw, so I could just go through this more quickly. But we're in no hurry. All right, so go for a nice straight section. So right around in here looks pretty good. There's a little ridge there, so I probably want to stay to the right of that. And the knife that I use most often is a Stanley knife. And cut there. Now, how wide do you want to have this? Well, this is a pretty wide reed at 12.92 millimeters. So usually I just do it by eye, but we can probably, yes, that's going to be more than enough out there somewhere. And voila, we have the beginning of a slip, a little bit on the wide side. But that's okay. So it's 14.8, 15.49, so it's a little bit fatter on this end. Rather than sand it down, I use a plane. But sometimes I get overzealous here and take off too much, so I got to be kind of careful. Now watch, I'll probably do it again. So you see how we came down pretty quickly on that. I want to keep it probably not any less wide than this. I'm going for 12.92, and when I get into the final sanding, 13.3. So that's fairly even. So that's close enough. Yeah, when I start sanding this down, the edges get really thin, and you don't want to have a super thin, cut yourself kind of edge. And so I usually use sandpaper to kind of even stuff out, and that'll bring it down further. And okay, now this is a gouging block that I made of some really hard wood. I think it's rosewood. But I really hardly knew what I was doing. But I ran a router here and also here to put this rule in here. You can see it's slowly wearing away a little bit at the edge here, but you could buy these with a nice little pad, although I find out if you have a soft pad in there, it goes to the soft pad pretty quickly, even like Kevlar. Alright, the first gouge I use is this number 3, which is incanal gouge. And what I really want to do with this one is get it all the way down. And I always kind of look up here, so I'm going to want a little bit more on the right. So I just put a little bit more pressure on the right. And do some more on the right. I don't know why it's not, it seems to like to slip around. That's getting pretty close. Let's do this side. Cuts through it like butter. A little bit more on the right. Check both ends, see they're about the same thickness. Probably need to take a little bit more off of here. Off of this side. Just a little bit more on the right here. That's pretty good. So that's as far as I go on that one. And then I go to a number 4. I also have this number 3, or excuse me, number 6, that if I want to put a tone chamber in or gouge out for the tail, but decided I don't like that, so I don't use that very often. So you should go down the center, trying to get a nice even tailing, and a little bit on the right side. A little bit on the left. A lot more on the right. That's pretty good. Let's do this side. I suppose if you had a ton of experience, you wouldn't have to look each time. But I need to look. Getting there. Shortly here we'll we'll measure the center. Maybe one more down the center. One of the problems I seem to have is you can see the edge here pretty well. You can see a little bit on here, like it still looks kind of thick here, and then thins out. But I don't have the skills to bring this down a lot further without screwing it up. So let's see where we're at. And I think around 0.45 is the thickness of the, I had to put it in, I was going to say 0.045 inches. What is that in millimeters? I'm trying to keep everything in millimeters. So 0.045. You're right around there. About 1.14. Evidently did it thinner here. But where are we now? 0.08. I think it's down to 75. Gets a little bit thicker in the center. and then the 60. I guess that when I gouge, I like to not get any lower than 60, but since this is quite a bit higher, maybe we'll gouge just a bit more. Otherwise we'll be sanding forever. $75, $70. That's probably good enough to start. All right, I'm gonna start sanding it, and using a sanding block diameter of 47. What I'm slowly starting to understand, let me show you my sanding blocks. These are out of the Tim Britton kit. And what I did is measure them. That's 58. And about 52 and about 47. Put them together for some added strength. And I always start with this 150 grit. And this stuff's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but it still works for a while. So that's how I set that up. I was gonna say, there's some other sandpaper that I've used, this stuff, that lasts forever, Apronet. But the problem is it has a kind of a Velcro back. It's kind of, I think it's kind of squishy, and I think that affects the shape somewhat. So I've stopped using that. The other tool I use, I bought this online, and it's real nice for grabbing this thing and putting a nice even pressure on it while I sand. Okay. Cane dust is no good for the lungs. So this is one point where I wear this. Let's see if I can do this without messing up the camera. Yep. I'm quite a sight. Probably can't see that because the camera's not pointed at it. All right, so I want to get down to 0.045. So I'm going to work out some of the thickest areas first. 7.5. Okay, so this area right here is kind of thick. I don't use this thing until I get it relatively close, because it doesn't seem to even stuff out as well as I like. I need to put pressure more or less on the top. If I end up going over here too much, I'll end up with a sharp edge here and fat edge here. Okay, 70. Still got some in 80 around here. I'll have to edit this out so you don't have to suffer through how long it takes. It's a little thick here. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to say this is probably close enough that we can go ahead and use this. And it seems like the only way this grabs is I make it wet. Pull this off, so there must just be like a tiny bit of moisture left on there. Sandpaper's come off. It must not have made the made this tight enough. Okay, so 70, 65, 62. I probably should work on the side a little bit more before I put that device on there. Good. That's pretty close. Around 60 to 65 right now. I'll probably bring this down to about 50 or so, and then I'll switch sandpapers to 220 grade. The more experienced guys will be looking at this and going, oh my god, no, you gouge it down to there. I don't have that skill yet, but I can sand. Okay, so now we're down to about 60. We got down to 58 over there. Okay, so I'm going to pull a little bit more. Let's come undone again. Put a little bit more weight on this side. This is probably the section of reed making where an experienced guy could look at what I'm doing here and saying, no, 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 Bob, you're making it way harder on yourself. Either that or they're going to say, yeah, that's the way you do it. Let's see what we got now. 56. 55, 57, 60, 60. I'm going to help this down a little bit. Work this side a little bit. $55, $54, $55, $57, $56. Yep. Just, what would they say in Ireland? A wee bit more. That's probably Scottish. Hi, Mary, I'm down here. Hello. So we're about down to 50 now. And we're going for 45. Now the other thing I can say about this is that the thickness that you use, I've seen reed makers bring it all the way down to 0.030 and as thick as 0.07 inches. I don't think it really matters that much. The thicker will obviously make it stiffer down by the back, the bottom end of the reed. But anyhow, brads mostly seem to be around the 0.045 inches, and that's what I've been doing. But I have noticed when he suggested I use smaller diameter, and you have to be picky about the sanding block you use, and then as you're sanding it, you'll end up pulling away the edges and narrowing this thing. In fact, probably wouldn't hurt to check right now and see where we're at. So I'm just taking the edge off just a little bit. Remember, I want 12.92, 12.94, and 13.25. So as I bring this down, I may end up losing a little bit more of this. When I do the final sanding of the sides, I'll make sure that this is fairly even width across. See what we got now. 53, 52, 53, 52. Well, I'm real happy about the evenness. I'm a little nervous about the width. makes me want to try smaller diameter. This way I'll take off a little bit less of the edge, because his chanter seems to like wide reeds. All right, 47, 49, 50, and 49. I'll do a little bit of finger work here. Okay, 40, 48, 48, 47, 49. One more time with this, and I'll just take the width that I get. Okay. "48, 47, 46, 48, 47. I bless that as being just about done. The other thing I like to do is just give it a little bit flatter finish. I tell you, some people would not go with this fine sandpaper. This is just 320. And at one point, I did it at 600, and then I think 1200 and 2000. I would wet it and let the grain rise, and then sand it again. Put wax on it. I would rub it with the back of my fingernail, but I think my level of knowledge and skill of reed making does not lend itself well to determine if those kinds of things make any difference. But it just seems like you want to have this fairly fine. One of the problems I have seen, if you leave it too rough, is that when you start trimming it, when you have the two slips together and you start, cutting it down, if this isn't nice and smooth, kind of with a ragged end, and I don't think that's good. So get to put away the tools, at least some of them. All right. Do that later. 3.08, 12.94. Well, that's pretty good. All right, so I'm going to put weight a little bit to the back of the center. .87, 12.96, 13.02. 12.92. And actually, it's most important what's in this area right here, because these ends are going to get cut off for the tails. 12.8, 12.9, okay, 12.87, 12.87, 12.71, 12.62. I brought that in down too far. But the important thing now is to check. I don't know if the camera will catch this. I'll lean back. That's pretty flat there. Pretty flat there. So I think I'm going to be okay with this as is. So what do I do next? I mark it off. I'll show you what I use. Okay, first the center. So we're actually about 114. So that would be half of that's 57. Right there. And then I use this little thing. I don't know how to pronounce this name, but I think it's one designed by Cillian O'Brien. But what I use it for is to give me a good tail shape. This tail shape seems to result in less cracks. And I actually exaggerated even a little bit more once I sand it. Probably an easier way to do all this. But this seems to work, so I keep doing it. And I also think this is a good place, a good mark for how much you want to have your initial scrape. So this isn't all that critical, but I'm putting some center marks here, and this is just for the initial scrape. Now I'm going to end up trimming this for sure once it's together, and then the scrape will have to come down lower than what it is right now. But this seems to be a good start because I pre-scrape it before I put the two slips together. I sure hope I have the camera line. It'd be a real pisser if I'm doing this and you're looking at something over here or something down here. All right, so next, and I don't need a dust mask anymore. Whoa. here's where I start using some tape. Okay, so the last thing I did is I didn't use the 0.47. I used the next lower one, which is 0.41. So this is a good way to hold it in place for this initial scraping I do, and also for the final cut. So I use electrician's tape. I think I picked this up from Tim Britton's method. And the reason for the pre-scape, it does a couple things. One, I think it helps prevent from splitting, cracking cane when you're putting the thing together. And it also makes the sanding a little bit faster on the scrape. And I do most of that with sanding. But now I use this. Just come in here and take that off. Sort of following the V-shaped scrape. Okay. Same on this side. Then I like to pretty up the scrape with scalpel. And I bring it to the edge here a little bit. And I help deepen it as well. That's looking pretty good. God, I should be playing that Irish music again. That's my problem. Okay, I've managed to scrape away the halfway mark. So I'm going to measure that again, and now I don't have the bark there that marks nicely, so I'm going to use a pencil. So theoretically it has not changed length at all, it's still 114. And so this is going to be 57. That's pretty good. By the way, I change this blade out regularly. Yeah, after every few, say half dozen reads, I switch it out. And I'm using these heavy-duty utility blades, DeWalt. There's actually all sorts of blades you can buy, but these sort of work okay. All right. What I'll do here is I put a little pressure on it and I kind of rock it a little bit. And then put increasingly more pressure on it. Get that nice little snappy sound. Save the tape. And now I got a couple slips I can put together. So the next thing I do is, looks like I cleaned up the old string. I use some of this think this is hemp. Okay. Usually make sure the top is flush and I don't worry too much about the bottom. And the edges have to be like perfectly aligned. So hold that there. I wind it fairly tightly. And I bring it down to about right here because I'm going to do a little bit of sanding. Check again that those are together. And I don't want to mess up the string that's holding them together. Okay, I used to at this point grab some of this sticky cobbler's wax and then stick it on there, but it works better and it also protects the string is the masking tape that or this electrician's tape. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do, well, I didn't do that very well, did I? I could probably still do it. I wonder if maybe this is a little bit better. Oh, that looks a little better. So, by the way, I think oh, never mind. I diverged too much, too easily. So it's pretty easy to cut this down. And this way you're cutting it pretty evenly. I like to cut until I'm into the mark that I made. The end here is a little bit less critical. And over here, a little bit different kind of cutting. I could just switch it over, but they don't always match. And so if I stick on one side, if I know that the drawing looks like it's good, gotta be careful you don't squeeze this too much or you could crack this. And I think I'm doing this a way that I've never cut myself doing this. I've cut myself doing other stuff. There. All right, I tell you one thing I'm a little concerned about. See now is there is a kind of a depression here. So we have to be careful that we don't mess that up. All right, now I have this kind of unusual tail finishing method. This is a 70 millimeter sanding block, and what I do is I put this kind of down here towards the end, and I kind of count. I do like maybe 15 times. And then I get towards the end here. What I'm trying to do here is create a nice kind of boat shape. The other thing is I want to have a smooth transition, like maybe all the way to the end of the tape here. So I'll do, and I'll look at it and I think, well, that's cockeyed. I need to take more material off over here. So I'm going to put it maybe a little bit more in here. Probably a little bit more over here now. I think that's pretty good. All right, I'm going to chamfer the edges here. I think it just helps to pull the two tails together without things cracking. I'm also going to dip this in water, and it's going to hold or soak in a little bit more water, again making it a little bit easier to wind without cracking. It's also a little bit long or uneven. And got all that. I'm also going to chamfer the ends here a little bit, so there's not an abrupt step for when I wind it onto the staple. I'm always afraid I'm going to cut through and then I'll end up with an uneven. I haven't done that yet. I'm going to set this in here and let that soak for just a bit while I set up my winder. And this is actually the mandrel I made for
Hi.
Hello.
Are you talking to yourself?
Yep. All right. This is more of the right size mandrel for the D. What I had on there was one for the B, so this is closer. And one problem I have with this thing is this chuck comes loose fairly often during the process of making it.